Thanks be to God. You have been listening to another episode of the Walking by Faith podcast hosted by Minister Larry. Greetings, we hope all is well. This is the Walking by Faith podcast hosted by Minister Larry Montgomery, Sr. and friends. Genesis 1:1, KJV, states, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And 2 Corinthians 5:7, KJV, states, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." While Romans 10:17, KJV, says, "So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God." Which brings us to Hosea 4:6, KJV, that states, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." Welcome to another episode of the Walking by Faith podcast. I am your host, Minister Larry Montgomery, Sr. The sole purpose of this podcast is to present candid discussions about various words that are found in the Bible with an eye towards defining in the context of these troubled times, along with clarity, insight, commentary, and hopefully some revelation to interested listeners. This podcast is a presentation of the Montgomery Media Group.tv and can be found on most podcast platforms. Video presentations are available on YouTube, the African American Shopping Network channel. This show is sponsored by www.theauthor'scorner.online. Please like us and follow us on Facebook.
We're here, thank God, for yet another week, another day in the land of the living. God bless you. This week's conversation, I came across this topic over the course of the week, and it just struck me that maybe it might be of interest, and it might be something that might be helpful in our thought processes to understand that some of the things we go through, and when we go through things, that God is still with us, and God has a purpose for us. And the reason why he sends us through these things, first off, obviously, because we need to learn a lesson, and or we may need to have a testimony for someone else. And so there are clearly reasons why God does what he does. I want to talk to you about the characteristics of a Christian believer. Let us understand there's a difference between wannabe Christians, those part-time Christians, those guys and ladies who, when it's convenient for them to seek God, they do it, and they do it wholeheartedly. But God is not one to be played with. You can't be lukewarm with him. Oh, today you're a Christian and tomorrow you back to the world because, you want to get your party on type thing. And when God needs you to do something, well, I can't do it at this time, Lord. Maybe if you could set it up for tomorrow afternoon when I come back from the gym. That's not the kind of God we serve. That's the kind of person who wants God to serve them. And that's not the thinking that you should have. So anyway, there's a difference between wannabe Christians and true believers. I think that some of the characteristics of the eagle would be of a good metaphor here. So let's look at Isaiah 40 and 31. It's probably the most familiar biblical reference on eagles. And it reads as thus: "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint." That's from the King James Version. This verse is the conclusion of a chapter detailing the greatness of God. It reminds us that the strongest of believers may stumble and fall, but those who trust in the Lord have been given a strength that this world cannot offer. Do you know? Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Some of the trials and tribulations that we suffer or will suffer, they take you to a place where you sometimes find yourself like, I just can't make it, Lord. I can't do this. Lord, help me, to make it through these problems, these troubles, or whatever it is that are a heavy burden on my spirit and on my heart. I just can't take it. God will not put more on you than you can bear. You really don't know how much you can actually bear. And that's okay, because whether you think you can bear it or not, God is there to show you how much He loves you and how much He wants to be a part of your life, that He'll try you until He perfects you. They talk about making wine. And one of the ways we make wine is the grapes are crushed. They're crushed until they turn into nothing but liquid. Okay. And then they're mixed or whatever type of things go on with that. And at the end, you got a good wine. God, listen, He wants to make you the kind of Christian that people can look at and clearly get an understanding of how good God really is, because you got a testimony. Yeah. I mean, listen, you walk around and you stub your toe. Oh, I hurt my little toe, and you tell somebody that. Okay, it's a testimony because it happened to you and you survived it. It may not be as dramatic or traumatic as you think played it out to be, but then again, it may be even more dramatic and painful to somebody else if they can not avoid that situation or cannot understand where they can go for their help. And your testimony is just letting them understand that, they can go to God. Now, I want to go on here for another minute or two. Eagles are magnificent birds. They are beautiful. They are powerful. They may fly high and see untold sights of God's creation. The phrase, "but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength," that appears just before they will soar on wings like eagles, should catch your heart time and time again. I am one who needs God's renewing strength of my strength and uplifting constantly. When one begins to research the life of an eagle, they can end up with all sorts of fascinating thoughts. And I have a little video here I'd like to offer you. I'll put it up.
Eagles are uncommon birds, depicted in the scriptures as a picture of the victorious Christian life. These 6 traits of eagles should encourage us to soar higher in our life of faith. Trait number 1. Eagles fly at high altitudes, not with low-flying birds like sparrows or other small birds. Principle: if you want to be an eagle Christian, you need to fly with other eagles and stay away from sparrows and ravens. Trait number 2. Eagles have strong vision, with an ability to focus on objects up to 3 miles away. When an eagle sights his prey, He will not move his focus from the prey until he successfully captures it. Principle: in order to succeed, we must have a clear vision and remain focused no matter what the obstacles may be. Trait number 3. Eagles feed only on fresh prey, never eating dead things. Vultures eat dead animals, but eagles will not. Principle: be careful about what you feed your eyes and ears with, especially on the internet, movies, or TV. Trait number 4. When storm clouds gather, eagles get excited. An eagle uses the storm's wind to lift himself higher, far above the clouds. In the meantime, all the other birds hide in the leaves and branches of the trees. Principle: we can use the storms of life to rise to greater heights. High achievers thrive on challenges and use them profitably. Trait number 5. An eagle tests before it trusts. When a female eagle meets a male and they want to mate, she first tests his commitment. Then and only then, will she allow him to mate with her. Principle: whether in private life or in business, one should test the commitment of people intended for partnership. Trait number 6. During the time of training her young ones to fly, a mother eagle throws the eaglets out of the nest. Because they are scared, they jump into the nest again. Next, the mother eagle pushes the eaglets off the cliff into the air. As they shriek in fear, Father Eagle flies out and catches them up on his back and brings them back to the cliff. This goes on for some time until they learn to start using their wings to fly. Principle: the people who love us do not let us languish in sloth but push us hard to grow and prosper. Even in their seemingly harsh actions, they have good intentions for us, and these steps are necessary to teach us to fly. Eagles don't always have a soft and easy life, nor will we. But just as eagles illustrate, God is calling us to wait on Him and learn to soar higher, above the cares, trials, and trivial pursuits of life. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31.
Why by crossing the bridge to fatherhood? Hosea 4:6 KJV tells us that my people perish for lack of knowledge. In today's culture, that statement seems to become truer by the day when it comes to black children. When we look at the impact of fatherlessness on the black family household over the last 30 years, we see the culmination of all of our culture's efforts to disparage black people through the breaking down of our most basic stronghold, our family unit. Today's culture has used and misused black men almost since the day we arrived in America. We have been abused, enslaved, blamed, and accused for everything from being lazy when they don't fairly employ us, to physically abusing us when we excel, to enslaving us to do what they should have done for themselves and more. This American culture we live in has incarcerated us, experimented on us, and designed a separate definition to us. And as soon as we start complying with this designated new nature, they blame us for not succeeding and causing fear and distrust in the very same culture we find ourselves discouraged to be a part of. So what do we need to overcome this brainwashing, you ask? We need to return to our roots. We need to get back to being the kings and queens we once were. We need direction from God. The good news is that He has already given us the directions we need. The guide to crossing the bridge to fatherhood is just that. Here we review the directions the Bible holds for our return to greatness within our own homes and communities. Read Crossing the Bridge to Fatherhood by Elder Dr. Larry Montgomery, Sr. Available on Amazon and www. The Author's Corner. Online in both ebook and paperback formats. Get your copy today and read it to your entire family.
We're back. We were talking about the eagle. Let me give you a little background on it. Excuse me. Hold on one second here because I'm double trying to get busy. The eagle has the longest lifespan of its species. It can live up to 70 years. But to reach this age, the eagle must make a hard decision. In its 40s, its long and flexible talons can no longer grab prey, which serves as food. Its long and sharp beak becomes bent. its old age and heavy wings due to their thick feathers become stuck to his chest and make it difficult to fly. Then the eagle is left with only two options: die or go through a painful process of change which lasts 150 days. The process requires that the eagle fly to a mountaintop and sit on its nest. There, the eagle knocks its beak against a rock until it plucks it out. After plucking it out, the eagle will wait for a new beak to grow back, and then it will pluck out its talons. When its new talons grow back, the eagle starts plucking its old aged feathers. And after 5 months, the eagle takes its famous flight of rebirth and lives for 30 more years. What an inspiring story. What could be our application of this? Renewing one's strength on the mountaintop may be rather painful, but needful. As we grow closer to God, we see that much of our lives are like an eagle's. We discover we are weak in eating and applying God's spiritual food. We observe that our sharp beaks often speak things that they should not, and that our aged lives are more weighted down with sin than we ever imagined. However, God in his loving grace places us in his nest of maturity. Abundant grace resides there for us. We find that in Romans 5 and 8. At times, we soar, and at other times, we nest and grow. It is God's cycle of maturity. True Christians are magnificent new creations. They are beautiful. They are powerful. They fly high, and they see untold sights of the glory of God. When we see an eagle in flight, soaring on invisible air currents, we can be reminded that God, who supplies the eagle's strength, will also strengthen those who love him and call upon his name. We can find that in Psalms 50 and 15, and again in Isaiah 55, 6 to 7. Eagles are uncommon birds, depicted in the scriptures as a picture of the victorious Christian life. These traits of eagles should encourage us to soar higher in our life of faith. Now, many of these things have been already spoken in the video clip, but I wanted to point out just one little, my testimony, one event that kind of brought me to an understanding of who I am. Because before this particular incident happened, I thought I knew who I was. I grew up, and I may have said part of this some time back, I grew up and had a part-time father because my father and my mother had a part-time marriage. And that is like when things are going well, everything is going good. But when something is amiss, then everything seems to fall to the wayside. And we're no longer married, you're doing you and I'm doing me type of relationship. And as a child, you really don't understand because that's confusion. And God is not the creator of confusion. So you're living in a household where there's confusion. When you leave home, go to school or go to play or whatever, life is whatever it is for other people, but you have an opportunity to pick and choose which people you actually pay attention to or which people you just kind of like gloss over. And so the ones you decide to pay attention to, they either reflect what you're accustomed to at home or they present you something that you're not familiar with. And so I don't want to be confusing here, but I want to be clear. Sometimes life is like a movie, you know. Sometimes you feel that you're in it, and then sometimes you feel like you're watching it. But at the end of the show, you start to become or get comfortable with things that you've seen and heard. And so back to the part-time family environment that I was raised in, it came a point when my father, who had my mother and father had separated late in life, and so they were no longer, he comes by for a few weeks or whatever until she gets, bored or tired or whatever, or he gets bored or tired and wants to go out and do themselves. So at this point in my father's life, he was about in his late 70s, he was living alone, in his studio apartment at the senior home or whatever. And he fell down and couldn't get back up. And thank God for some of his neighbors who checked on him. At least one called for an ambulance. They picked him up and brought him to the hospital. And I was notified because I was the only one close enough to get to him. We had some other relatives in the neighborhood, but their number wasn't available, put it that way. So anyway, to kind of fast forward a little bit, so he was in the hospital, and they talked to him and found out that he had some other issues and did the tests and all this kind of stuff. So they came to the conclusion that he had some real health problems. But anyway, so now he's at the hospital, and I come by to visit, probably every day or whatever, every chance I got, because I didn't know how long he was going to be there. Didn't really know what was wrong with him. And so one day I came up to visit, and the doctor, met me in the hallway. And I said, so how's he doing? When is he going to be able to go home? Because coming back and forth up here is, getting to wearing me down. So anyway, the doctor, he said, look, your father's probably not going to go home. No, he said specifically, he said clearly, your father's not going to go home. At best, he'll leave here and go to a nursing home, but I don't see him going home again. So I asked him, I said, well, as I thought about that, I said, he lives alone, and I guess the only other option would be for him to come and live with me. Now, my situation is pretty much set up, and we comfortable, and I'm like, this would be a real change, because if he had to come stay with us, that means he needed to be cared for. He needed to be attended to, and that would be a substantial change in our lifestyle, put it that way. And not being selfish, that it was something that I could not do, or I couldn't come home and say, look, to my wife, hey, my father's really bad off, and he needs to come stay with us for a while. That wasn't the problem. The problem was understanding that this is going to be a major change and what that actually meant. And so I'm standing there talking to the doctor. I'm listening to him. He's talking, but I'm thinking to myself, I said, well, okay, have you told him this? The doctor said, no. I said, well, I'm looking at him. And I said, well, I guess I should tell him because, that's probably the right thing to do. Somebody close to you to give you that kind of news. That was my thought. So anyway, went inside to his room to sit with him and visit. And I'm struggling with the thought of having to say this to him because, we're chatting about whatever. And I know that this is something that's important that he needs to know. And so I said it. I said, you're not going to go home from here. And I don't know if it dawned on him, but it sure enough dawned on me what that meant. That wasn't good news in no way, shape, or form, especially at his age, and especially the dilemma that I thought I was facing, him coming to stay with me. Because my other brothers and sisters, that wasn't going to happen. They already had an opinion about him because of him being a part-time father in their mind, or no father at all in their minds. And they were bitter about it. And I can't really blame them because I'm not them. And I really, I was the oldest. So I kind of gotten over a lot of stuff and forgotten about a lot of stuff because I was on with my life, my wife, and my children. But anyway, so I kind of lost my train of thought there. But after telling him that, and as I'm telling him that, it just dawned on me that that's devastating for someone to come, anyone, whether they a loved one or not, to come and have to tell you that this is going to be the situation. You're not going to go home. So things have changed for you. And that requires a lot of strength to continue to go on because you see that what was comfortable, what was familiar to you is no longer there, is not going to be there. You're no longer going to be able to return to that comfort zone. You're no longer going to be able to come to those things or be in places that are familiar to you. You're going to be wherever. At that point, you're in the hospital. He was in the hospital. And so the plan was, like I said, that he would leave the hospital after, a week or two, whatever. He kind of gained a little strength. And then they would send him to the nursing home. Now, nursing home wasn't that far away from, the neighborhood and or the hospital. So it wasn't like really unfamiliar territory. What was unfamiliar is the fact that you're going to be here. And if you've ever been in a hospital for any period of time, you've been in a hospital for more than a day, like overnight, that's not the place you want to be. I don't care what's going on with you that needs to be dealt with. Having to be in the hospital is traumatic. It's always cold in there. I mean, really. They don't have to turn the air conditioner down, But more importantly, he left there and went to the nursing home, and the situation didn't get much better. Although he was no longer in pain because they kept him medicated. But, I could tell that, it really wasn't going that well because the medications, they tend to take over. And when they talk about hallucinating, yeah, that happens. And so one morning I came in to see him at the nursing home and he was like trying to smoke a cigarette. Now, you can't smoke cigarettes in the hospital or in the nursing home. So he had this make-believe cigarette, which was invisible, and he's trying to puff on it and light it and whatever. And, it's just heartbreaking to see that and know that this is a man, a man that I knew, reduced to that kind of activity just to kind of survive. And so that was heartbreaking. But I say all that to say this, that when he finally passed, that God will take you through things, because clearly I didn't get up any morning and say, well, let me prepare myself for my father to have to go to the hospital and be there for a period of time and then go to a nursing home. And then after that, at the nursing home, go back to the hospital because he really deteriorated then and then pass. And so, like I say to my siblings, whenever I can get their attention, he did the best that he could with what he had. His father wasn't in his life. When my father was a teenager, his father ran him off because he accused my father of entertaining his girlfriend. Not his wife, but his girlfriend. Now, yeah, I know that you got to kind of back up a little bit to kind of picture all that going on. But then as a teenager, whatever was going on in the household before that particular event cannot have been any more than chaos. And then being run out, fearing for your life, because some woman had accused him of being, trying to get with her or whatever, or however it fell out there. But your father coming to you and throwing you out. And so my father came to New York from New Orleans and, trying to start a new life, try to, live life as a young man. What do you know? Your father haven't taught you anything. And then you get here, you get yourself pregnant, get a girlfriend, you get pregnant, now you got a child. What do you know about raising children? You're still a child. So anyway, you do the best you can with what you got. New neighborhood, new state, new everything. And so when I talk to my siblings about it, I try to let them understand. Listen, he did the best he could with what he had. If you sow all of that you feel that, no, I would never do that, and that's wrong, and all this, you don't know what you would do because you don't know what you're doing. But God is there for you, and you need to understand that when there's no one you could talk to, no one that will earnestly understand what you're going through, you could turn to Him. I've seen posts on the internet about, well, you're an African, you're from Africa, and your ancestors is this here, and they believed in this and that there, and I understand all of that whatever their religions were then and may still be. But right now, I'm living with the religion that I have, that I've accepted, that I understand. Okay, I'm not in Africa, and not really sure that I would actually go to Africa because I'm just that old. Okay. When you get old, you get smart enough to know where you should go and where you shouldn't go. And so, anyway, enough of that conversation. But I think the point that I wanted to make to you today, and I'm not going to be much longer, is that turning to God when you need Him is fine, and that's a good thing. But when you got a good thing going on, you want to try to hold on to it. First off, you never know when you're going to need it again. And secondly, if it's a good thing and it's good to you, why not stick with it? Because it works. Anyway, as the scripture says in Isaiah 40:31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Some days you're running, some days you got to walk, but you just don't want to faint because you fall out fainting somewhere. You don't know where you're at. You don't know what's going to happen while your eyes close. So you might want to have something that you can rely on to help you, to protect you, to cover you. And God is clearly an option to be considered. And remember, He's not a part-time God. He is on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, 365 days in the year, ready, willing, and clearly able to help you. So with that said, let me say God bless you, and I'll see you next week, God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Montgomery, Sr. and friends. Join us again next time as we continue to labor in this vineyard with an eye towards bringing the words of God to those who are interested. Remember, the sole purpose of this podcast is to present candid discussions about various words that are found in the Bible with an eye towards defining in the context of these troubled times, along with clarity, insight, commentary, and hopefully some revelation to interested listeners. This podcast is a presentation of the Montgomery Media Group.tv and can be found on most podcast platforms. Video presentations are available on YouTube, the African American Shopping Network channel. This show is sponsored by www. The Author's Corner. Online. Please like us and follow us on Facebook. May God continue to bless you and yours until next time. God bless.